Hey guys, Poro here with another video. This time I'm going to do my World's 2025 power rankings for top lane. At the time of recording this video, I actually haven't even posted the FlyQuest breakdown yet. It's done. It's already uploaded to YouTube, I just haven't clicked publish yet. But basically, it'll be that video goes out, then after that, the Everything You Needed to Know About World's 2025 video will go out, and then this one. And I did end up deciding to do it in 5 separate chunks, and then I'll do a 6th video that has my team rankings and my pick'ems. If you look at the poll that I put out, it was about, I want to say 60% off the top of my head said that they wanted one big video, and then 40% said that they wanted the 5 smaller videos. Realistically, doing it in a bunch of smaller videos will be better for my channel. So I was more so just gauging interest to make sure that people weren't like super against it, because I would rather do it this way. It's like slightly more work for me, but the videos should perform much better than if I just did one big chunk. So we are going to do 6 separate videos. Then if I have time, and this is a big if because now that I'm separating this into 6 videos, I don't know if I'll have time since World is happening in literally 4 days. If I have time, I want to do a draft video the same way that I did for MSI, where I go over all of the patch notes that happened. So that would be 25.18, 19, and 20. I would go through those 3 patches, and then I would go through the champions and see which ones I think will actually be strong for the meta. So there's a chance that that one will come out. So basically, we're looking at, I mean, at this point, the FlyQuest and the Everything You Need to Know video will already be out. So when this one posts, we're looking at upwards of 6 more videos after this one gets posted. And then I'll have to try to cram that all in the however many, 2 days left that'll be remaining once this video goes live. But anyways, people who have been watching my esports content for a while will know that when it comes to these player rankings, I do these unscripted for the most part. I mean, like, I have some notes or whatever. If you want more of my opinions on a specific player, there is a segment on every single player in my team breakdowns, so you can listen to me ramble about said player for a minute or two if you want to hear what I have to say there. But here, I'm just going to do an overview about what I think about the player. This video is going to be much more opinion-based. So my guides, I try to, as best as I can, present each team with like half objective point of view, and then maybe a little bit is my opinion. But the goal of the team breakdowns is to get people excited for every single team. I want to be able to view each team in some kind of positive light, so that way people are looking forward to watching them play. This video is much more like, what do I actually think? What do I think of the players? Who do I think are good? Who would I think are bad? Stuff like that. So not gonna waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So Keen, I think he's up there. Definitely going to be either best or second best for me. I think he's had a tremendous year overall. When I'm doing these rankings, I guess I should outline this because some people do this differently, right? Some people care more about performance across the entire year. Some people care more about how they've looked specifically at internationals in the past few years or across their career. Some people only care about summer split and playoffs. The way that I do these is that I do acknowledge the fact that League is a game that changes once every 2 weeks, and the meta that happened in summer might not be the meta heading into Worlds, so the players who did really well in summer might not do well at Worlds because the champions that are strong are different. I do acknowledge that. That said, I think that if you try to use that logic to say, okay, I'm going to do my rankings based on what happened over the course of the entire year, I think that neglects a lot of the improvement aspect of the game. I think that teams and players improve year after year. Like, for example, the Otacon was introduced this year, right? So teams sucked at doing the Otacon at the start of the year, and honestly, they're not very good at doing it now, but they have improved. Everybody has gotten better at doing Otacon. So using a game from, February or something might not be indicative of how good a player is now. So like a random example I could pull out is Busio. I think that Busio has grown a tremendous amount from Split 1 to Split 3, and if you try to account for all of his games across the year, you would end up placing him lower than how good I think he actually is. So for me, I do account for the entire year, but I weigh Split 3 more heavily, and then I weigh Split 3 playoffs a lot more heavily. So for me, when I'm doing this, the most important thing to me is how do they look in Split 3 playoffs, then how do they look in Split 3, then how have they looked in past international tournaments, and then how have they looked the rest of the year. That would be like the order of importance for me. So I think that Keen, he's had a really good year. I think he's had a really good split as well. I think you can make an argument that in Split 3, he was up there as Genji's best player. I mean, like it was Keen, Chovy, and Ruler were Genji's three best players this split, but Chovy kind of dropped off in playoffs. So I mean, I really think you could make an argument for Keen if you wanted to. I think that Keen is insane. Obviously, he's a matchup beast. He can take any matchup in the world and turn it into, like, he can take any losing matchup and turn it into an even matchup. He can take any even matchup and turn it into a winning matchup. I've seen some pro views of this guy play lane. It's just absurd what he can do with some matchups that I thought were unplayable, and then I just watch him play and he's even at 10 minutes, and I'm like, how are you even at 10 minutes? The junglers weren't here. This matchup is like impossible. How are you even? This makes no sense. So it's just, that's Keen to me. So something with this split is that Keen has been playing a lot more carries. In past iterations of Gen G, he was more on weak side duty, playing stuff like Asante, Ornn, these types of champions. This split, he's been, or like at least in recent history, he's been playing a lot more Gwen, a lot more Jace, a lot more Camille. The types of champions that he was really good at. Well, obviously Gwen wasn't around back in 2018, 2019, but the champions that he used to be really good at in his mechanical prime, when he was kind of like the mechanics super carry guy when he was on Afrika, he's kind of back to doing that a little bit. So, I think Keen is a really flexible player. I think that he is a great laner, super influential in team fights. Definitely going to be S tier for me. I did think that his MSI was a little bit weaker than I was hoping, but whatever, I don't care. Next up, we can go Zeus. I would also have Zeus in S tier. Oh, you know what? That's right. I forgot. I was going to do these in like a little bit of in a different way. I was going to tier list them on where I thought they were, and then I was going to do a ceiling tier list and a floor tier list. I forgot about that. Oh, I'm glad I remembered. Okay, so Keen, S tier ceiling, or S tier overall, but we're going to go S tier ceiling and then A tier floor. So I think if Keen plays, realistically, the absolute worst he could ever look at this tournament, he'll be A tier. And I thought that at MSI he was A tier, because I was not very happy with how he did at MSI. I thought he was fine, but I thought he could have done way better. I would say Keen's floor is A tier. His ceiling is S tier. Overall, I'm going to put him at S tier. Zeus. Zeus' ceiling, I think, is higher than Keen's. When Zeus is on fire, he is the best top laner in the world by a large margin, in my opinion. I think that Zeus has Keen beat when it comes to mechanics. I think he's got Keen beat when it comes to how much pressure he can apply in a lane, how much damage he can do when you give him the resources, stuff like that. Keen is a lot more consistent than Zeus. Sometimes Zeus will overplay his hand and he'll die on timers he shouldn't die. Sometimes Zeus will just have absolutely stinker games where he doesn't show up at all. So I would say Zeus floor, maybe like a B. I mean, I think his floor is for sure lower than Keen's, but I think his ceiling is like slightly higher. And I would have Zeus as an S tier top laner as well. Okay, let's do Doran next. I know that Perfect is the third seed, but realistically T1's the third favorite from the LCK, so we'll do Doran next. Doran, if we're talking about his ceiling, I think his ceiling is bottom of S. I mean, if we're looking at his ceiling was Split 2 playoffs. The games that I saw him play in Split 2 playoffs were tremendous. I mean, he was definitely making a case for being the best top laner in the world for those couple of best of fives that T1 played. I mean, he was absolutely popping off. Floor? Yeah, Doran, your floor is not very hot, or not very high. I mean, like, we've seen Doran at internationals in the past. At Worlds 2024, I thought he was the biggest limiting factor for HLE and the main reason why they lost to BLG in the quarterfinals. I think that Doran in past years has always been very inconsistent. I think at MSI, Doran had some really bad games. I think even in Split 3, he had some really bad games. So I would say Doran's floor, I would put in like, Doran can be really, really bad sometimes. I'll go Doran in C. But then I'll say that I would put him in A tier. I think Doran, he does int a lot, but I think he is a better player than... Okay, if you take T1 fans and you remove them from the equation, if you take all of their opinions and you just push them to the side for a second, I think as a whole, Doran is an underrated player. I think a lot of people tend to focus in on all of his stupid deaths and all of his ints, and they're just like, man, this guy ints a lot, like he's bad. I think that Doran has been a top laner in the LCK for, almost a half decade now. I mean, when, like, after Keen and Zeus, I mean, like, what top laner are you actually going to want on a top tier LCK team. I think that Doran is definitely up there, you know? So I have a lot of respect for him as a player. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll leave him an A. I think there's totally a chance he could just run it down and be invisible like he has in the past. But then, you know, if he shows up the way that he did in Split 2 playoffs, he could be a beast. So that's what we'll say. Perfect. So first we'll do ceiling. I think that perfect ceiling is maybe like an A. He had a couple of games, like a low A. He had a couple of games of the Split that I watched where I was impressed with him, where I thought that he made some really good plays, was creating a lot of space in team fights. However, I mean, I'm not a huge Perfect fan as a whole. I think that Perfect, when he's at his worst, he's the worst top laner in the LCK. When he's at his best, he's like maybe top half, maybe. So in terms of floor, I mean, I'll say realistically, I think the worst he could do is like bottom of C. I don't think he has a D tier floor. Like he's been in the LCK for long enough for a reason. You know, if he was that terrible, he would just be benched by now. I also think the LCK's top lane pool is pretty solid. So, you know, I'll leave Perfect at bottom of C for what I think his floor is. But overall, I'll put Perfect in. I mean, he's either low B or high C. I'll go low B for now, and then we'll decide later. Okay, so that's LCK. Looks like next on this tier list is LCP. So let's do LCP next. They've got 5 top laners. All right, so Driver, his main strength is that he is an insane engager. The angles that he sees to make plays on champions like Ornn, Sion, Gragas, the stuff that he does in mid and late game objectives is really fantastic. I mean, like, I've said this before, but I think that CFO is actually not a very smart team when it comes to mid and late game. I think a lot of their decision making is bad. A lot of the objective fights that they take are bad. But somehow CFO just keeps on winning them anyway, and that's because CFO as a team are really good at fighting. Like, pretty much everybody on their team is really good at scrapping it out, and Driver is one of those. The number of plays for CFO that should have gone horribly wrong, and then Driver just makes the clutchest engage ever, and then saves it and claws it back, and then CFO win, is just ridiculous. Like, he does it all the time. I think that Driver's ceiling is not that high. I mean, he has a few problems, right? He can only play like 5 champions. You know, he can play Gragas, Shen, Sion, Ornn, and then after that, I mean, like his Gwen is pretty good, but he's gone on record saying he doesn't like playing Gwen. And then his other champions, like his Ambessa is not very good. His Rumble is mediocre. So a lot of the champions that you would want him to be able to play, he just can't play. So that really hurts his ceiling. I also don't think he has the most impressive lane phase ever. I've never really been impressed by his lane phase. So really it's just that mid and late game ceiling. So I'll say that Driver definitely has an A tier ceiling. When Driver's playing at his best, he is bordering on or is an elite top laner. But it's just he has a lot of problems. I mean, like, I would say the Driver's floor is probably like here. I mean, Driver runs it down less than Perfect does. Like Driver can have some really, really bad games sometimes, but for the most part, I mean, like, he's never going to, like, he'll always be effective mid and late. I've never seen Driver not be effective in a mid and late game when CFO have any chance of winning. It's just that sometimes Driver will have a really bad early game, or he'll be forced onto a champion that he can't play, and then he sucks. So I would say that Driver, I'll say he has a higher floor than Perfect, because I've seen Perfect have some really, really bad games, but a lower ceiling, because I think those champion pool issues and his laning issues are really going to hurt. Overall, I would say Driver is a B tier top laner. Honestly, you know, I'm going to put him above Perfect. I'm really not that high on Perfect. I know a lot of people say that Perfect has improved a lot this year, but I'm not a believer. Okay, Rest. You know, I really don't want to do Rest dirty like this, but I mean, I think Rest ceiling is like a C tier. If we were talking about a couple of years ago, Rest ceiling is B tier, because he used to be really good at champions like Gnar and Jace and all of that stuff, but I haven't seen anything from Rest this year that's actually impressed me. He has been able. There are some teams who have really leaned into the idea of punishing Driver and draft, and in those series, Rest comes in and he can bandage the situation and salvage the situation and be a stable top laner at an LCP level. But it's just, I mean, every time I've seen him internationally this year, it feels like he gets outclassed by every top laner he plays against. Domestically, I don't think he's beating anybody in lane, really. You know, he's supposed to be like the can play everything, including the higher damage champions, but he has lower damage share numbers than Driver does. Like Driver's picking tanks and doing more damage than Rest is. Like Rest is just not very effective in these games. Yeah, I can't see Rest doing well. So I'm gonna say a C tier ceiling, and then I'll give him a D tier floor because I think as much as I say that Rest isn't that good, Rest is almost never terrible. I mean, like the worst that we saw from Rest was when he was forced to pick Ornn, and then I believe it was Doran picked Jace into his Ornn, and then had like a 7k individual gold lead or something ridiculous like that. But maybe it wasn't 7k, maybe it was like 5k or something. But I mean, so a couple of things for that. So first of all, Rest is not supposed to be playing Ornn. The person who's supposed to be playing Ornn is Driver. And what happened was that I don't remember if it was either mental or it was an injury, but something against T1, Driver was supposed to play game 5 and he couldn't do it. And then so it should have been Driver game 5, lock in Ornn, do the Driver thing. But instead Rest had to play because Driver couldn't, and Rest was put on the Ornn, and Ornn is not a champion that Rest plays, and he's against an LCK top laner, and LCK top laner has Jace, who is like an insanely impressive matchup into Ornn if the Jace knows what they're doing, and the Ornn isn't very good. So just a lot of factors combined that made Rest look horrible. But like situationally, I understand like where he was coming from and why maybe we should kind of ignore that game. So I think that like when Rest is at his worst, he's still acceptable. Like he's not gonna solo lose you the game or anything. He might sometimes have no impact, but I don't think he's like terrible or anything. So overall, I would put Rest in C. Even though I think that he's not getting any better than C, I also think he's not getting any worse than C. So I will have him either at the bottom of C or the middle of C. Hero O2. Okay, so Hero O2 is a very interesting player because he loves picking carries and he loves doing damage. So Hero likes to play... I mean, the first two champions I think of when I think of Hero are Jace and Gwen. Like, he loves to pick high damage champions and then try to carry. The main problem with Hero is that sometimes he can make silly mistakes. Like, I feel like I can never trust his lane phase. I can trust him to win lane 1v1, but I can't trust him to account for jungle ganks and bot lane roams and support roams and this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of times Hero will just die to a random gank because he's pushed up too far, something like that. And then also the same thing, I feel like in mid-late game team fights, I can never trust him. Like, sometimes he carries the fights, but sometimes I feel like he's just positioned in a really awkward way where he can't do damage, or he'll like die before the fight starts or something. So I think that Hero, he has a pretty high ceiling, you know, for LCP standards, but I just don't trust the guy. I would say I'll put ceiling in like B and then floor in D. I think this is reasonable. I think that when Hero is playing at his worst, Pun is the better option. I think that when Hero is playing at his best, Secret Whales become a very scary team all of a sudden. So overall, I will put Hero in C tier. I think that Hero has been... I mean, I'll put it this way. I mean, it's pretty indicative based on how I did my ceiling and floor, right? I think that Hero at his best is better than Rest, but I think across the split, I would trust Rest more on my team than Hero, so I'm going to leave Hero behind Rest in C tier. Pun at his best. Okay, Pun's best game this split was when he played a game of Gwen, and it actually looked really, really good. He had a really good game of Gwen. But apart from that, he only plays tanks, and he's not actually that insane at tanks or anything. I don't think that Pun is the type of player you can really trust to carry or weak side properly. Like he's kind of meant to be a weak side specialist, but he's not that good at it. I would say his ceiling is I mean, his ceiling is lower than Rest's. I would say Pun's ceiling is in C, and then his floor is... I mean, his floor is probably an F. I can see a world where you put Pun in and he gets absolutely demolished by like every top laner in the tournament. I could totally see that. So yeah, we're gonna have Pun ceiling C, Pun floor F, Pun D. Then finally we have PSG's top laner. I'm gonna try to pronounce it to pronounce this name. I'm probably gonna get it wrong. Is it? I think it's Aj, something like that. Like Aj. I've heard people pronounce it Aj. I've heard Aj. I've heard like Ozzy. I've heard like 10 billion pronunciations of his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go with Aj is what I'm gonna say. So I think and you know, I have a couple of Taiwanese people. Every time I pronounce his name, they message me in Twitter DMs being like, being like, no, no, that's wrong. You gotta try again, try again. So I'll trust them. You know, if I get it wrong, one of them will message me and they'll set me straight. But so in the past, Aju, like he was a weak side specialist, and unlike Pun, he's like a real weak side specialist. At his best, what I think that his best games ever were at MSI 2024. It was the lane swap meta. He was, and this was the lane swap meta where people would swap level 1. He would play Cassante, Udyr. I remember his Udyr being really good. And the thing that I always remembered about Aju that I was really impressed with is that he could always seem to like steal more gold and XP out of these 1v2, 1v3 situations than he should have been able to. I think that in lane swaps he was at his best. I thought that at MSI 2024 he was playing like a B tier top laner. The problem is that I've never been impressed by his lane phase. I think when you get down to his 1v1 lane phase, he usually gets outclassed by a lot of players. I think we saw that this split with PSG, he was not winning lane against anybody really. I mean, like he was a better laner than Ray Farkey. We can give him that much. But like I even thought that he was getting gapped by Biopanther. Like I thought that Biopanther was getting the better of Aju when they matched up. So ceiling, I mean, if we assume lane swaps are super present, I think he can be like bottom of B tier ceiling. But they're also like changing around the lane swaps a bunch. So you can't even lane swap before the 4-minute mark anymore, I think is what they changed it to, right? Was the patch is no lane swaps before 4 minutes or something like that. So if he's forced into more 1v1 situations and he has to rely on his laning skills there, you know, I mean, I could see his floor dropping all the way down to D. I think he's like more consistent than Hero, so I'll say that his floor is higher than Hero's, but I could definitely see him having a really bad tournament. I will put overall, I will say he is bottom of C. Oscar is interesting because he was pretty mediocre all year, and then against KC in the match to determine who goes to Worlds in summer playoffs, Oscar was insane. He was playing like the best top laner in LEC for that short stretch of games. Enemy top laner was Kana. People would say that across the year, Kana was the best top laner in LEC. Kana got solo killed like 3 or 4 times by Oscar in that series. And you know, I pointed this out in my Fnatic breakdown, but this is something that Oscar just does, like historically throughout his career. He'll be really mediocre for a long time, and then he'll just randomly have these games where he's popping off and he's hard carrying and he looks like the future star of the league, and then he just goes back to being mediocre again. So I mean, I have no idea what to expect from Oscar. It's one of those things where it's like I like to say that I value split 3 playoffs more than I value the rest of the year, right? Like I like to weigh the split 3 playoffs games as much as possible. And I think that in those split 3 games, I would say that Oscar's what he was, I mean, it was the best I've seen him in a while. I think he was playing like a high B tier top laner. But if I factor in the rest of the year, I mean, he's had some bad games. I would say his floor, I'll put in D. And then overall, again, like he was only good for one series. I have to account for a bigger sample size than that. I think that Oscar has been pretty underwhelming over the course of the year. I would say overall, I would put him in C tier. I just have to decide where. I think I would rather have Hero on my team, to be honest. You know, this is weird because like I have Oscar. Honestly, you know what? I'm gonna put Oscar's ceiling as lower than Hero. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, Broken Blade. Broken Blade at his best is an elite top laner who can compete with the East. He has had some really good games internationally in the past. He's a meta pioneer. He was the first person to play Rek'Sai top, first person to play Zac top. He's had really good games on Swain top this year, Mundo top. Despite the fact that he had the Warwick stinker at MSI, he also had some really good Warwick top games in LEC. This split he's been playing stuff like Kled, like he's been playing a lot of Kled top. He brought the Rek'Sai back. So, you know, I think in terms of like, is he the type of person with the X factor to beat the East? Yes, he is. And I think that sometimes he also has the laning to back it up. So I think that he's also like a big time mid late game player. He's the type of player who can just make a game winning play at a moment's notice when you never thought it was going to happen. So I would say that Broken Blade's ceiling, I'm going to put in high A tier. I'm really a believer that if Broken Blade is playing at his best, he is kind of the top laner from the West to contest the East. Floor, I mean, we've seen his floor. I think that the worst Broken Blade as it has looked was at MSI, specifically in the series versus Furia. You know, in that series, he was trying to do too much. The rest of his team wasn't really keeping up. They were being passive, so he was trying to overplay. He was doing too much, and essentially, he was borderline running it down. I'll say his floor is like top of D, very top of D. So overall, that averages out. I mean, I'll say he's a B tier top laner. I think this is fair. I think Broken Blade, like if we factor in how good he was in Split 3 and Split 3 playoffs, I'm down to put him at like top of B. I think I think he's had a better year than Driver because he has like in not year, sorry, not year. He's had a better split than Driver. I think that in Split 3 he has shown less weaknesses as a player than Driver has, and I think that he also just has a higher ceiling. Then we move on to Merwin. Merwin, in at the start of the year, he was playing a lot of carries, a lot of ranged top laners. Like he had a lot of Varus games was the main one that he was pulling out a bunch. He had a Nico game, so at the start of the year they were trying to like MKOI were trying to do this 3 winning lane strategy somewhat. I was never really a big fan of it. I thought that in Split 2 they had a lot of issues with their draft where they would have a cohesive bot side and then they would just pick some random range top laner that didn't fit with the comp at all, and they were kind of running 2 different identities. So heading into Split 3, I was hoping either Merwin would tone it down with the ranged picks and try to expand on the rest of his champion pool, like the rest of his standard meta champion pool, or that the team would play around his ranged picks more often. Like they would pick more champions like Orianna or Varus or these types of champions that are kind of more stallyish, safer, more stable in a 4v4 situation, so that if Merwin wants to play a ranged top laner, he can do more work in the side lane with it. MKOI did decide to choose one of those. They chose putting Merwin on more regular champions. So in the past, I said that Merwin was a player who it felt like he could only play 3 meta-ish champions. Those were Mbessa, Gwen, and Cassante. Cassante is not very strong these days. He's been nerfed so many times to the point where he's just not that strong anymore. Gwen has gotten multiple nerfs. She's still very good, but she's gotten multiple nerfs, so she's not the champion she used to be, because she used to be the strongest top laner in the patch. She's not that anymore. And then Mbessa has obviously been strong the entire time. But to me, those were the only 3 meta champions that I felt like Merwin could pick. This split, he can still play all 3 of those, but he has also added Yorick to his pool. He's added Ornn. I believe he's added Sion off the top of my head. I think he added Ornn and Sion. But he's got some tanks now. He's got Yorick, so his champion pool is bigger. He dropped a lot of the marksman. So the kind of like marksman flare upside that he had is gone, but in its place, he has become more stable with meta. So I think for this tournament, I will say that his floor or his ceiling is going to be on the lower side, but his floor will be on the higher side. Because I think that Merwin overall, he's just turned his game into he's turned his game to a very stable game. He's not the type of player who's going to make massive game-losing mistakes or pick a champion that dies once and then he's useless the entire game. He doesn't really do that anymore. Like now he just plays like his tanks or his one-off higher damage bruisers, and he does his job, and life is good. So where would I put Merwin? I think I will put Merwin above rest. I'll put Merwin at the top of C. Maybe I could consider moving into bottom of B, like as we get further into this, but I'm feeling top of C. I still think that Merwin is probably the weakest link on the team, although he's much weaker of a link than I would have had him prior to MSI. I think he's become a more stable player. Flandre, I don't think he has the highest ceiling ever. He is not a player who is super flashy. He's not going to pop out and scream at you that he's like some kind of crazy player. But he does a lot of things really well. So something he does really well is that every single fight where he needs to be there, he's always there. Like every single time that you need Flandre to be in a play, he's ready for it. Like the side lane looks good. Like he prepped the side waves well. He was able to group up with the team well, and he's ready for the play. This is something that top laners can sometimes struggle with it, or with. I never see Flandre struggle with this. Something else Flandre does really well is that he actually, like, he wards really well. He is really good at using any pressure that he gets from his lane to set up objectives for his team. So I think that part of the reason why AL's objective setups go so well is because Flandre is really good at setting them up. In terms of top laners, I think he's probably the best in the world at doing this portion of the game. I think that in fights, he's an elite talent when it comes to absorbing pressure and kind of like limit testing with his own health bar. So like he can build a lot of space for his team and make it easier for his team to fight. So when you're watching AL team fight, nothing Flandre is doing is really sticking out as like fantastic or anything. But then when you watch how much easier it is for his teammates to play based on what he's doing, that's where it really gets impressive for me. So I think that most of Flandre's skill set kind of all funnels into the same thing, which is objective setups and map pressure. Those are like the 2 things he's really good at. So I would say that in that regard, I mean, I'll put him bottom of S for his ceiling. I think that when he's playing at his A game, he is an S tier world class top laner, just in a very unorthodox way. For his floor, I also think that Flandre has a very solid floor because, like, so when he's playing at his worst, when people are like flaming him, it's because he's dying on timers that maybe he shouldn't be dying, or he's getting outclassed by a top laner who is just better at laning than him, and like those things are all fine. But at the end of the day, I mean, like he still has a lot of the strengths that he has no matter what. Like he has an elite champion pool of champions that he can all pilot at a very strong level. Like he still is going to execute team fights well, stuff like that. So I mean, I think that he can only get so bad. I would say that his floor I will put in B tier. Yeah, I think Flandre at his worst is better than Zeus at his worst. I think that's fair. So overall, I will say that Flandre is an A tier top laner. I'll put Flandre in A above Doran. Bin. So Bin's ceiling is, I mean, Bin's ceiling is like here, right? Like, you can either argue, so Bin's ceiling is either second or first. I think you could go either way. I think that across Zeus and Bin's career, Zeus has had higher highs than Bin has had. Although Bin's highs are, I mean, at any given moment, he can just be the top laner in the world, right? This year has not been that, especially this split. Bin has not been the player that people think he is this split. There have been a lot of games where he's been completely invisible. There are a lot of games where he's inting. I don't know. I just think that this split, he's shown an inconsistent side to him that we have not seen in a long time. So, I mean, I think that at Bin's worst, the team is playing for bot side and he's being put on weak side tank duty, and then he's completely invisible on those tanks. So, floor, I'll say, yeah, something like this maybe. And then overall, so here's what I think. I mean, obviously we have been second in ceiling, right? So at a first glance, you would think like, oh, okay, S and C, like top of C, or top of S, top of C, it'll average out to like A, right? But I think the reality is that this ceiling is kind of more based on what he's done in the past and just like what his reputation is. Whereas this floor is way more telling of how he's actually played in Split 3. So I would say I am not very confident that Bin will actually be good at this Worlds. I would say going into it, I would put Bin in B tier. I don't know if I want to put him above Broken Blade or behind Broken Blade, but I think that Bin has actually just not been that good this split. There's a reason why he missed out on All Pro. Flandre, the Shy, and 369 were all better top laners than Bin in regular season. And then for BLG's playoffs run, I don't actually think that Bin got that much better. He was better, but I still don't think that he was like the best top laner in the LPL or anything, not even close. So I'll put Bin there. The Shy. All right, so the Shy's best quality is that he just does a fuck ton of damage. Like when the Shy is taking over a game, he just does obscene amounts of damage. He is playing team fights fantastically. He's shit stomping lane, doing all of this stuff. I really don't, honestly, I don't think the Shy has an S tier ceiling. Like no matter how much I just, obviously he used to be the best top laner in the world. He used to have, like in his prime, the skill between him and the next best top laner was astronomical. Like he was just that good. And he shows flashes of that now. Like he has some games where he'll play as lane stompers and then he'll stomp lane and then he'll do a bunch of damage and he'll carry the game and IG will win. But even in an ideal world where I'm trying to picture 2025 the Shy at his best, I still have it in my head that he's going to run it down like once or twice a game. Like I just cannot envision a world where the Shy is not inting at least a little bit. And so for that reason, I'm going to move him down to A tier. Like for his ceiling. Floor, I think the Shy has some disaster games where he is losing his team the game, like straight up. But I think that even when he's doing that, like he still manages to contribute positively to any play that ends up going positive. Most of the time that he has a disaster game, it's because the enemy jungler is camping his lane, which obviously, like I'm not saying that the enemy jungler shouldn't have been camping his lane. Like it's the right decision to camp his lane. But point being that I think that most of the time when he's like playing like a dumpster, it's because he is laning fine, like he's still laning well, and then it's just the other factors that he's not considering. So I think that no matter how bad the Shy performs, like he'll still be a strong laner. So I will put his floor in C tier, actually. I'll say that his, yeah, I think his floor is higher than some of these players. I'll put his floor, like, at Doran level. Honestly, I really think that the Shy is just, like, an extremo Doran. Like, the Shy is just, he's got, like, um, super high highs and then super low lows. Like, he and Doran are kind of similar in that regard, but they can both run it down at any given moment, and they can also just, like, show up and have a masterclass game randomly, too. I think the Shy has had a better split than Bin. I think that from start to end, he was performing better than Bin. I don't think I trust him to move him to low A. I just don't think I can do that. But I am willing to put him ahead of Bin. I need to see more from Bin. I'm a believer that Bin can play well at this tournament, but I'm not going to bet on it until I see it. And then we got 369. Okay, 369. He's very similar to Keen in the sense where it's like, okay, for Keen, his ceiling and his floor are super close to each other. I mean, I think the 369 is an S tier ceiling. I think that when 369 is playing at his best, he's like up there with Bin. Like, there were some splits where 369 was a god and Bin was a god, and they were constantly fighting back and forth for the best spot. I mean, I think the 369 ceiling has got to be like here. And then for his floor, we have seen 369 play badly sometimes. But even when top esports is struggling, I feel like 369 is usually the best performing player on the team. And even when 369 is playing bad, I feel like he never plays bad into bad teams. Like, sometimes he will play bad into a really good team, but I feel like he has a really strong baseline level of skill that he rarely dips below. I'll say that his floor is like top of B. Well, yeah, we'll go floor top of B. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't know what order I want to put these two in. I'll put Flandre above 369 just because I think that top esports is just the team that I trust less. So I could see all the players on top esports having pretty bad tournaments. Overall, I'll put 369 in bottom of A. I think for a good portion of the year, 369 was top esports best player. I think that there was a portion of the year where he was one of top esports worst players, but for the most part, I still feel like I trust him to be decent. So how do I feel about this? 369 bottom of A, the Shy Bin top of B. Okay, here's the thing about these top laners, is that I feel like any sane person would just disregard what their brain is telling them and move Bin up. Like, I feel like this tier list would make so much more sense if I just moved Bin up to A tier. But the problem is that, like, every single part of me that wants to move Bin up to A tier only wants to do it because of how Bin has looked in the past. Like, if I'm only taking into account, like, if the things that I'm weighing the most heavily are what happened in Split 3, Bin was not that good. Like, he really wasn't. So I'm going to stick to my guns and leave Bin in B. It's going to make me uncomfortable the entire time, but I'm going to do it. It's what I really believe. Again, I think that Bin totally could show up and become a god. That's why I have him so high on my ceiling tier list, but I'm going to leave Bin in B. It's what my gut is telling me. Whippo's ceiling, I think, is actually shockingly high. He's the other Western top laner alongside Broken Blade, who I think is at this tournament who you would want to put on a team if you were solely trying to defeat the East. Whippo's got a lot of the same strength as Broken Blade. You know, he has the really big champion pool. He's always thinking about what champions he can pick to get an edge over the opponent and counter what the opponent is doing in draft. Whippo is also, he's a very high damage top laner, the same as the Shy. Honestly, Whippo and the Shy have a lot of parallels. They both take on a much higher damage share than you think they would because they're just much more aggressive players than what top laners normally are. Like, Whippo's ceiling is going to be on the higher side because when he's at his ceiling, everything that he's doing in lane to try to squeeze out tiny advantages is going his way, and he's playing like some kind of matchup that he's comfortable with, so he'll always get a lead in the matchup, and then his impact in team fights is just crazy. So I think ceiling, I will put Whippo here. Yeah, I'll do that. And then floor, I will probably like here. Like, Whippo has had some really bad tournaments in the past. Like, off the top of my head, I thought that his MSI 2024 was really bad. I was not necessarily impressed with his Worlds 2024. And then I think in Split 2 of this year, a lot of the times that FlyQuest lost games, it was because Whippo was the liability. He was the player that the enemy teams were targeting. They were trying to set him behind because he would play too aggressively and would just end up bleeding a lot of gold, die on stupid timers, stuff like that. You know what? Honestly, I think that that I'm going to, for the floor, I'm actually going to do, I don't think there's any realistic chance Broken Blade looks as bad at Worlds as he did at MSI. I think that Broken Blade's realistic floor is probably closer to like this, and then same thing for Blippo. Yeah, I feel better about this for a floor list. And then overall, I mean, I think that Blippo will be good at this tournament. I think he will be a strong top laner at this tournament. I'll put him in middle of B. I think most likely what will happen is that in most games he'll have like one or two random mistakes that could range anywhere from medium mistake to big mistake. But then when push comes to shove, I imagine he will be very effective in team fights and will be doing the thing that he always does where he does a lot of damage and he's building a lot of space and just kind of being like the Western combination of the shy Flandre. Like that's kind of how I view Blippo in my head. So yeah, we'll go with that. All right, Boal. I think that Boal is probably the worst top laner at this tournament. And I'm not saying this just because it's the Brazilian representative or whatever. I'm saying it because I think that Boal is the weakest link on his team. Like when I think about VKS's roster and when I think about which top laners from the CBLOL I would want to put on a championship caliber team, Boal is not the first name that comes to mind. Like it's cool that Boal is here. If you look at the story of his career, it's just kind of neat that he managed to win. But if I'm thinking about top laners from the CBLOL who I would rather have on a championship caliber team who I think could handle themselves better at the World Championship, you know, I'm thinking of players like FNB, Weiser, maybe even Robo. I think that Robo runs down a lot, but at least Robo has a ceiling where he can compete with people sometimes. So I think that there's a number of top laners who I have in my head who I'd rather have on my team than Boal at an international tournament. I think that Boal ceiling. I mean, I think Boal played the best league this year against Furia. When I watched the series against Furia, some of the team fights he was playing were pretty clean. I think his ceiling is probably like here, but then I think his floor. Maybe he's not the worst top laner at this tournament. Maybe Pun is the worst top laner at the tournament. I think Pun is the worst top laner at the tournament. I'll put Boal's floor at like top of D, or bottom of D. Sorry. Yeah, my bad. I think that Boal is actually the second worst top laner at the tournament. Pun just hasn't shown me anything. Like there was a brief portion of the year where I was saying that I wanted Secret Whales to go with Pun over Hero just because Pun was more consistent than Hero. Like he was more of a known quantity. But by the end of the year, I was definitely on the Hero train, and I thought that Pun shouldn't get any games. And then finally, we've got Dokla, Big Dokes. I mean, Dokla's ceiling at this point isn't that high. His mechanics aren't getting any better. I'll say that Dokla's ceiling is like... I mean, do I think that the best version of Dokla can be better than... No, I'll put Dokla's ceiling at the top of C. But I'm going to put... Honestly, okay, this is going to be kind of funny, but I'm going to put Dokla's ceiling at the top of C and then his floor at like the bottom of C. Like I think that Dokla, like I don't know. I feel like we know what we're going to get with Dokla. He's a remarkably consistent player for the most part. Like, he's going to lose lane to some people, sure. But overall, he is a very stable top laner who has a lot of the fundamentals down. I would put Dokla, just based on how his year has gone, I would put Dokla here. Again, I know that Oscar had the really pop-off series, but I don't trust Oscar to do that because the rest of the year and most of 2024, he was more on the mediocre side. And then Aju, I think he looked really ugly for a good portion of the year on PSG. Like, it just looked like he was getting outclassed in lane by basically everyone. So even though both of these players, they had their higher moments in playoffs, I just don't trust them. And I mean, like, if you even want to go that far, I mean, I thought that Dokla had some high moments in playoffs too. I mean, he basically came in and saved the entire roster, and he had some big moments, like the Akali play against VKS was really big. So yeah, I think, let me take another look at this. Keen, Zeus, Flandre, Doran, 369. Doran in fourth feels so weird. Doran has not been that good, I don't think. Maybe I'm okay with this. Flandre, Doran, 369. The Shy, Bin, Broken Blade, Blippo. Driver, Perfect. Merwin, Rest, Hero, Dokla, Oscar, Aju, Boal, Pun. I think I'm okay with that. And then taking a look at the ceiling. Zeus, Bin, Keen, 369, Doran, Flandre. The Shy, BB, Blippo, Perfect, Driver, Hero, Oscar, Merwin, Aju, Dokla, Rest, Boal, Pun, and then our floor list. I'm pretty okay with this. Alright, that's it. There's my top lane tier list. Next, we'll do jungle. Oh, I guess I should probably do like a makeshift Patreon announcement so I can layer the Patreon graphic over it. I have a Patreon. Go become a member to that if you want to support the channel more while I'm making these videos. I have a lot of behind the scenes content. I post all of my scripts there before I make the video, so as soon as I finish the script, that goes up there so you get like an early sneak peek of what the video might look like. I do drawing videos there, so anytime I draw a Poro, I'll always record it and then upload the full recording unedited to the Patreon, so that will be there. Right now there's also a full rewatch of me reacting to the DRX versus T1 Worlds 2022 Grand Finals. I will turn that into a video eventually, so if any of that interests you, go become a member on Patreon. As you can see on the screen, my $10 members also get a custom Poro drawing that you can see there. And yeah, that's all from me. I will see you all next time. Bye.